So I want to take some time to talk about this article. Well worth Googling if you want to read it. This is going to be a long video, but I highly encourage you to watch it. It is written by Gábor Scheiring, a former member of the Hungarian parliament. This is a person who saw the rise of authoritarianism and the alt-right in Hungary, who saw Victor Orban come to power and how he co-opted the traditional class struggles to install a right-wing authoritarian government. Exactly what Orban did so successfully to allow him to assume control and become a dictator, and how different right-wing leaders in America or say Canada are copying him. And before you think it's not Canada, it absolutely is. See, the GOP in America and the Conservative Party in Canada are both IDU members under Stephen Harper. So is Viktor Orban's party from Hungary. They are all working together, they are all allied, and they are all teaching each other how to take over. And this comes in two parts. Gábor calls it the software and the hardware. The software is kind of the stories they say, the emotional stances they take, and then the hardware is the actual concrete actions they take once they're in power. So the software: appear as a folksy outsider. Position yourself as an anti-elite, even if you are the elite. Be an anti-immigrant. You have to be against globalism and against immigration. And most importantly, hype up economic nationalism. Make America great again. Make Canada great again. Now, the reason these software steps are so important to authoritarianism is it subverts the traditional class struggle. So usually it's like rich people against the poor people. That's the traditional class struggle. But doing all these things subverts that into a makers versus takers. So billionaires can position themselves as super smart hard workers, just like all those hard workers in the factories. And it's all those lazy leftists and welfare bums that are the real problem. And all those bureaucrats and people running the government, they're the real problem. This allows the group that is actually the rich elites to gain the support of the people who would traditionally be against them, and use that support against the people who are actually fighting for stuff that helps those people. And then once they use this narrative to assume power, they can start taking actions to secure that power. This is the hardware part. Strengthen their executive power. Dismantle the administrative state, dismantle any kind of programs that protect people's freedoms, like the Consumer Protection Bureau that Elon Musk is trying to get rid of. And kick out anyone deemed disloyal to the president. As for Canada, I just want to kind of point out Pierre Poilievre's already trying to censor his own party members and not let them apply for housing grants that the Liberal government put into place. Yeah, he's demanding that loyalty. The second one is discipline the judiciary and rein in the Justice Department. You want all of that power in the executive branch. And again, you see a little bit of that in Canada, with Pierre Poilievre running his mouth against judicial department mandates like bail and probation and parole hearings for certain people. Or Danielle Smith outright saying they're just going to ignore the law when it comes to anything federal. The next one is slowly change the electoral process. So you can have elections, but you're just always going to win them. Republicans have absolutely done this in America. Thankfully, Canada's elections are still a little bit better. The next one is control the media as much as you possibly can. Now you see this stuff with Elon buying X and turning it into a right-wing propaganda machine. The rise of Newsmax and OAN and Rebel News here in Canada. And how Pierre Poilievre and Donald Trump constantly say everything that's against us is just fake news. You can't trust the mainstream media. Only trust these very, very partisan sites that say what we want. And finally, secure control over your party. You need absolute loyalty to keep yourself in power. Donald Trump's pretty obviously doing this. Pierre Poilievre, again, like he's dictating what conservative MPs can do and demanding they don't actually access programs that help their constituents unless they come from him. So it should be pretty easy to see all of these things taking place in Western countries, but how do we stop it? Where are the points of resistance? Well, the courts should be a frontline point of resistance unless they're too subverted, which might be too late in America. The second thing is the media. It is vital we keep independent media alive, and that includes things like me talking on TikTok, people using their voices to counteract the right-wing controlled media. This is also why Pierre Poilievre is so dead set on defunding the CBC. He does not want an independent, taxpayer-funded media source. He wants nothing but right-wing, corporate-funded media. Finally, states and cities. Basically, the municipal level and provincial and state level governments are key points of resistance for authoritarian takeover. Here in Canada, we have the first past the post system. We don't vote for our prime minister. We only vote for our electoral or our ridings representative. Very, very important to keep this in mind and vote for good representatives in your riding. It also means that we resist at a grassroots level with local organizational structures, labor unions, etc. Get involved. Use your voice. Another one, I've had commenters talk about this. Commit to left-wing populist economic policies. This is something Jagmeet Singh also brought up in my interview with him. How do we resist? If we fix the problems that are allowing people to buy in to alt-right propaganda, they will be less likely to buy into it. So we need to have policies that actively help Canadian workers and Canadian labor. And finally, learn symbolic class politics. Valorize the working class. It says that us on the left can tend to come across as overly intellectual. Probably guilty of that sometimes, even though I'm a blue-collar guy. That we have to learn the language that authoritarians are co-opting. Unfortunately, Donald Trump going to pose as a McDonald's worker for a day made him relatable to fucking people who work at McDonald's, even though he's a billionaire who would never actually do that. It sounds dumb, but apparently it works. I just want to say too, as my own personal aside, this is why we do have to talk to people. And while it can be easy to get frustrated and be like, shut up, you fucking idiot, whatever, like that's not helpful. We have to converse with people. We have to explain our ideas in languages that people understand. I don't mean like French versus English. I mean using words and terminology that is relatable. Because the truth is, we do have to talk to each other, and we do have to acknowledge the issues that people are facing, even if they are blaming the wrong cause for it. We have to teach and educate in a gentle way to reach across that divide.